Peace, peace, Black people. Welcome to We Are Our Ancestors, Yemima's World, the Jelly Moose's Cafe. I am your hostess, Yemima, and as always, it's good to be Black in the land of the living once again. All right, so 47 has been in office now 2 whole days, 2.5 days, and from what I understand, at 5 o'clock this afternoon, the DEI government workers will be laid off or be sent home with pay. I'm sure layoff and firing will soon to follow. So the title of this episode is some of y'all melanated folks about the FAFO. What do I mean by that? I mean that we are here where I have been trying to tell people we would be long time ago. And not only me, there have been a lot of influencers, a lot of YouTube influencers, a lot of TikTok influencers, black and white, that have been trying to let black people know that we are not as free as we thought we were. We are now in the FAFO phase. And not because we voted for 47, but because we wasted time thinking that the government was going to take care of us. And we see now that there's someone in position of power and is surrounded by billionaires in position of power that plan to strip us of whatever rights we thought that we had. Um, I want to talk to my Black religious people because we are, or they are the majority when it comes to Black people in this country. Black Christians in particular are the majority when it comes to uh, religion in this country. There are more Black Christians than there are white Christians. There are more Black Christians than there are Muslims. There are more Black Christians than there are Buddhists, or any other, again, religion in this country. We are the most religious people, I believe, on the planet. And we, for some reason, think that our religion is supposed to or keeps us away from our culture. We have not found, or y'all have not found, the balance of incorporating your culture into your religion. Y'all have been very afraid to embrace your African ancestry and your African ways. That is not what our ancestors did when they came to these shores forcibly. They fused their African knowledge and wisdom with the new world that they were brought to. And we, or some of y'all, have been so afraid. And even our recent ancestors. I would say that this phase of Black fear happened probably, and it hasn't been that long ago, because even in the 40s, 50s, and in some parts of the 60s, right, before the height of the civil rights movement, we were embracing our Blackness. We had the Black Panthers, um, we had SNCC, we had other Black organizations that was embracing that Africanness. Even Dr. King embraced his Africanness by going to Ghana and visiting with the president at that time, Lumumba, and talking to him about their liberation. He also admired Marcus Garvey, which is probably the first Black documented liberator of the 20th century. Uh, Even though him and Malcolm X saw things differently, they both embraced their Africanness. So I think after the assassination of Dr. King, Malcolm X, after Marcus Garvey died, we got scared of our Africanness. Now, my mother and father lived in the country. I didn't live in the suburbs. I wasn't raised in the city. I am truly a country girl. And we didn't have to speak of our Black pride or our Africanness because they too had been taught something totally different, but we didn't shy away from it, and we understood who we were descendants of. My sisters and brothers wore afros. Uh, we we embraced our blackness, but it seems now that we, as a people, are afraid to embrace it. So here we have the picture on the front of Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. And this is how she went to the inauguration of 47. She went draped in her cowrie shells. For those of you who don't know, the cowrie shells are very significant to Africans, and even to Africans in the diaspora. They hold the essence of our ancestors, used for currency. They represent wealth, they represent protection, wisdom, and strength. Ketanji Brown Jackson wore those cowrie shells to the inauguration. And after seeing some of our people performing at that, I think it was more of an inauguration, but I digress. I don't see a lot of Black people celebrating her for wearing this. Although I did see a lot of Black people, Black women celebrating this, Chucks and Pearls, which is rightly so. I'm not bashing that at all. You should definitely be proud of your fraternities, sororities, whatever club that you are a part of. Definitely be proud of that. So I'm not bashing that, but I'm just wondering where is the same energy for Chief Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson that you had for Chucks and Pearls? Is it that you don't know what she's wearing, or you are afraid to agree with what she's wearing? Because then that means that you may hold some affection for Africans, and God knows we've been told so many times by white people that Africa is such a dark, savage, heathenist place that we really don't want to have anything to do with it. I remember hearing one Black pastor said, I thank God for slavery because if not for slavery, I'd be in Africa worshiping a tree. And you're here in the United States still worshiping a tree because the cross that Jesus was crucified on was wooden. So it basically says that he was crucified on a cross, the original meaning, meaning a tree. So you are still here in the United States worshiping a tree. And because we have not acknowledged, because we refuse to acknowledge our ancestors, because we refuse to learn anything about them, here we are at the FAFO stage. You got Black people on social media leaving these different platforms. They're leaving Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and all of these other platforms looking for an underground railroad to be able to speak freely. And a lot of them are going to, and I won't say the names of them, that they're going to, because that's your prerogative. But those places that you are going to are also owned by Sun Dodgers because we don't own any underground railroads. We don't own any railroad companies in the United States. So it doesn't matter where you go. You may be able to speak freely now, but as soon as it begins to grow and your free speech is going to be um, minimalized because the richest man in the world just bought a whole damn country. So if you get on these platforms and start to speak negatively about anyone, if they want to, they will buy those platforms because he has enough money. President Musk has enough money to do so. So again, we're at this place where we are dependent on the government to give us our freedom. to do things that we should have had the freedom to do a long time ago. I have tried diligently to give history lessons so that when stuff like this happens, you're not surprised and you kind of have an idea of how to work through it, around it, above it, below it, however you need to get on with your life. But for Black Christians, the only books you read are found between the pages of Genesis and Revelation, or you read books written by pastors about the books that are found between Genesis and Revelation. You don't quote any of our ancestors. You don't quote Marcus Garvey. You don't quote Frederick Douglass. You don't quote Harriet Tubman. You don't quote Sojourner Truth. You don't quote Ida B. Wells. You don't quote Fannie Lou Hamer. You only quote Matthew, Luke, John, Paul, um, uh, David. Those are the only people that you quote. I have yet to see most Black Christians quote anybody or anything other than the Bible. And I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but the solutions to all of your problems cannot be found between Genesis and Revelations. They cannot. So you are at the FAFO stage. 47 just signed executive orders today that rolls back um, what was then coined affirmative action is now DEI. And so he just rolled it back where people, Black people, and people of color who were being employed um, because of DEI, because the company had to have diversity inclusion in their hiring process, are now being told, we don't have a place for you. And so here we are at the second Reconstruction of the United States. Most of us don't know what the Reconstruction era was, what happened during it, what happened before. We don't know. From what I understand, 47 has rolled back 78 or has reversed 78 laws or actions that President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris had put into place. You remember Kamala, the one that y'all hated because she refused to say that she was Black or because you didn't like her laugh. He has rolled back 78 laws, including one to lower prescription drugs for people on Medicare and Medicaid. Now, I don't know how old the listeners are, if there are anybody even listening, but that's going to affect your mamas, your daddies, aunties, your grandmoms, your granddaddies, your children who may have special needs. Yeah, it's going to affect them. But we just thought that, we as Black people in 1865, they freed us, so we're free to do whatever we want. And some of y'all Black people who cozied up to the Sun Dodgers and thought that if you cozied up to them enough, that when the ish hit the fan, your ish wouldn't fly. But your ish has hit the fan as well. It's it's really really sad because there have been prophets that have been sent to us to tell us to get ready. And just like the prophets in the Bible, we refused to listen. We just kept going to church services on Sunday, listening to the preacher telling us that Jesus will work it out. I'm starting to believe that Jesus really was Black because he definitely on CP time. When it comes to working it out, during Reconstruction, when Abraham Lincoln was assassinated and the president took office, and I believe it was Andrew Johnson, I think. Please don't quote me because I got his picture in my head, but his name escapes me. Prior to him taking office, the 40 acres and a mule had been put in place where they were giving land to those of our ancestors who had formerly been enslaved. And after Lincoln was assassinated, his predecessor, vice president that took office, rescinded that order. Good old boys came back to their plantations and realized that it had been given to the Black people, the Africans that they had once enslaved. And so the president at that time rescinded those orders, gave the land back to the Sun Dodgers, and not only gave the land back to the Sun Dodgers, but gave them reparations. The laws that 47 is rescinding, that Biden had put in place, has already started to affect the Black community. So I just showed you the picture, and I'll show it again. For these Black nurses who had offer letters to begin working at a VA hospital. And more than likely, they may have been hired through the DEI program. Their offers have been rescinded. I don't have anything else to say. I really don't. I will say to my fellow hoodoo, voodoo, other African spiritual systems, conjure workers, root workers, jelly musas, storytellers, griot educators, Black bombers, home remedy practitioners, birth doulas, death doulas. Get ready because we about to be busy. We have entered the phase that our ancestors once had where Black people are only going to be able to go to other Black people for help. It's time to rebuild our communities. It's past time. It may even be too late. I'll continue to talk. I'll continue to tell stories. I'll continue to educate until I take my last breath. For those who have an ear to hear, let them hear. You know the drill. Love yourself, love each other. Give yourself some grace, give others some grace. Honor your ancestors, they will honor you. We are our ancestors. If that is not evident in the last 3 days, then I don't know what is. Until next time, stay safe.